After revisiting Oblivion in the new remaster, after years of playing Skyrim, something strange happened. It wasn't the graphics, the combat, or even the famously eccentric voice acting that struck me most. It was the humor. Oblivion's world is filled with moments of absurdity, levity, and a kind of awkward charm that makes its characters feel oddly real, even when they're delivering some of the most bizarre lines. In contrast, Skyrim presents a much bleaker, heavier world, where comedy is almost entirely absent. And while Skyrim's somber tone has its strengths, the loss of that spontaneous, almost accidental humor reveals something deeper about how the Elder Scrolls changed, and what was subtly lost along the way. While Oblivion is often remembered for its awkward animations and occasional bugs, its real charm lies deeper, in the intentional humor woven through its quests, dialogue, and world building. Beneath the grand narrative of the profane tearing away at the sacred, if you want to know more about that, please check out my video to see it explained. I need the views. Oblivion constantly reminds the player that a living world isn't only made up of heroes and villains, but of fools, eccentrics, and everyday people caught up in absurd situations. The game's writing embraces a wide spectrum of human experience, from tragedy to the adoring fan. You might find yourself helping a paranoid elf stop his imaginary gang stalkers, or joining a group of vampire hunters that are unwittingly led by one, or investigating an Agatha Christie murder mystery where you are the murderer. This kind of humor isn't just there for comic relief, it makes the world feel fuller, closer to real life where absurdity often walks hand in hand with seriousness. By allowing space for humor, even in a high-stakes fantasy setting, Oblivion captures something a lot of fantasy worlds miss. That laughter, pettiness, and ridiculousness are as much of a part of human experience as heroism and sorrow. It's that range of tone that makes Oblivion's world feel inhabited, not just staged, despite all of its technical quirks. And it's a range that would be notably diminished in the series' next entry. When Skyrim arrived, something had changed. The absurdity, the humor, and the wide emotional palette that once colored the world had almost entirely been drained away. Where Oblivion leaned into the absurdities of the world, Skyrim steered hard in the opposite direction. Its tone is overwhelmingly somber. It has bleak landscapes and color palettes, serious and epic music, and characters weighed down by tragedy and duty. While the narrative stakes are grand, a civil war tearing the land apart, and an ancient prophecy of world-ending dragons, the emotional range of the world is itself a lot more narrow. Very few characters are allowed to be ridiculous or foolish. Most are grim, serious, and pretty efficient. Of course, Skyrim has moments of humor, the drunken chaos of A Night to Remember, or Berlina's magical misfires, but these moments are pretty scattered, and exceptions rather than part of the emotional foundation of the world. In Oblivion, humor isn't just a few side quests, it's in its DNA. This tonal shift creates a sense of grandeur, but it also flattens the world. Skyrim's cities, while being visually more gritty and epic than Oblivion's, often feel emotionally pretty uniform. There's little space for the kinds of offbeat, self-contained stories that made Oblivion's world feel unpredictable and a little more real or interesting. Even the Daedra quests, once a source of ridiculous and surreal adventures, are largely stripped of their humor, presenting darker, more violent stories almost without exception. What's missing isn't just jokes, it's a more full representation of human nature. In trying to craft a more serious and legitimate fantasy experience, Skyrim inadvertently created a world where a lot of quests and scenarios blend together because of the relatively monotonous emotional tone of the game. And while it's certainly understandable because of the overly serious and gritty time it came out during, it's still something that is really noticeable when revisiting the game after the Oblivion Remaster. Real communities, even in their darkest hours, are filled with gossip, petty squabbles, and ridiculous situations. By narrowing the emotional bandwidth of the world, Skyrim lost a part of what made the previous installments unique, and what made its fantasy feel more engaging, in my opinion. And it raises a bigger question. Why does humor, especially in fantasy, matter so much in the first place? Fantasy worlds often strive for grandeur. Grand stakes, ancient prophecies, heroes standing against the darkness. But without moments of levity, those worlds can start to feel alien, too epic, too dour, and ultimately too predictable. Humor isn't just a tonal break, it's a vital part of how real communities survive hardship. It's the inside jokes between friends during work, the petty grievances that continue when the world seems to be ending, and the way people cling to the absurd to have a bit of fun in the face of uncertainty. Oblivion understood this instinctively. Its humor wasn't just distraction, it was world building. It gave the people of Tamriel inner lives beyond their roles in the grand narrative. They worried about petty things, they got tricked, they played pranks on each other, and because of that they felt more human, even in spite of the weird NPC interactions and stilted dialogue. You can see the same principle at work in other beloved game series. Hear me out, this sounds a bit weird, but take Yakuza for example. A story filled with crime, betrayal, and tragedy, but one that never loses sight of life's absurdity. The main character of the series, Kazuma Kiryu, can go from battling for his life in the Yakuza to teaching a dominatrix how to find her groove. And somehow, the emotional weight of the serious moments only grows stronger because the player has seen the full range of life around them. The ridiculousness doesn't weaken the story, it anchors it in something real. It builds out the character of Kiryu to be more than just an idealized hero, but a person with awkward and comedic interactions when he's out of his element. Without that range, a world starts to feel hollow. It loses the textures of everyday life that make heroism and tragedy meaningful. Oblivion, for all of its imperfections, built a world that understood this. Skyrim, in abandoning the more comedic and ridiculous situations of Oblivion, created a tonally gray and bland world that gets a little bit lost in its overly serious grit and angst. Looking back, it's clear that Oblivion wasn't just a quirky stepping stone to bigger and better things. It captured something that Skyrim, for all of its technical advancements and world-building enhancements, left something behind. Its willingness to embrace the humor, absurdity, and the full mess of human experience created a world that still feels really vivid today, long after its graphics have aged and its mechanics have been surpassed. Skyrim built a grander world, but in doing so, it also built a colder one where players are often visitors to a set piece, rather than citizens of a living world. Without the ridiculous situations and unpredictability, the world of the Elder Scrolls becomes a bit more bland and empty feeling, no matter how epic the quests or how beautiful the landscapes are. As Bethesda looks ahead to Elder Scrolls 6, there's a real opportunity. If they can remember what made both Oblivion and Skyrim special, they can create a world that surpasses anything they've built before. Not just bigger or more impressive, but more human, more immersive. Hammerfell can be a place that, like Oblivion once did, reminds us that fantasy is most powerful when it doesn't just show epic battles and history, but the whole spectrum of life itself. Thanks for watching.